Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum was launched to inform, inspire, motivate diverse talent to join the energy workforce by intentional recognition of current female energy leaders who contribute to growing Florida's economy and the purposeful sharing of their professional journeys. We are creating opportunity. Join me each week as we meet new leaders in energy and listen to their important roles in an industry that is vital to the country's future. Welcome to Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum interview and podcast. And we wanted to bring this back during Women's History Month, and we're so excited about today's guest. Please meet Commissioner Gabriella Passidomo. Gabby is a commissioner with the Florida Public Service Commission and one of the newer members, and we're just so thrilled to have you with us, Commissioner. Thank you for doing this in a month like this, too, when we can really highlight your leadership, what you do in the energy sector in particular. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Lila. It's really a privilege to be here. I'm excited to have a discussion with you. I mean, we always have great talks, especially when it comes to women in leadership. So it's really my pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you. And that's what this is. It's going to be a conversation, and let's just, keep it real, you and I, about what you do and your interest in serving on the commission. You, like me, started as a staff person at the Florida PSC, and I've often thought that really has been an organic advantage to understanding the agency and what the agency does. But let's level set. You are well into your first term on the PSC. You've already had to seek reappointment. Mm-hmm. And so where are you in your reappointment process?
Yeah, so I am happy to say I've received favorable recommendations, but both Reg Industries and Ethics and Elections, those two committees. And so next step is just to be taken up by the full Senate during regular legislative session.
Great. Congratulations.
Thank
Commissioner. Congratulations. And for anyone who's not familiar with the process, the commissioners are appointed by the governor and then have to be confirmed by the Senate. So you go through several committees before you can be taken up on the floor. We're in the middle of session right now. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that will all be done in short order.
Right.
I know it's nerve-wracking while you're waiting. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, we look forward to your continued leadership. You're doing such a great job. And you are the only woman on the Florida PSC. And, I strongly believe in diversity on the Regulatory Commission, too. So thank you for representing. And really, it's not diversity for diversity's sake, is it, Commissioner? There's a lens that Absolutely. I think that you're able to bring to the table, not obviously just gender diversity, but you're also one of the youngest members on the Florida PSC.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It makes such a difference to have, I think all of five of us have very different perspectives when it comes, because we had various backgrounds. And so that really allows us to come up with, thoughtful discussion on the bench. And so I'm glad to be up there contributing and representing, anybody who's like me, my generation, women, so each of us, though, have a unique perspective up there. So it lends itself well.
And I normally wouldn't ask, but there's the point here. So I'm going to ask you. So how old are you, Commissioner?
I'm 31.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Not wonder. So just such a great role model for your generation, but also I think an example, Commissioner, of, there are no age restrictions really in terms of leadership and your ability to reach others. And you and I have talked about this a number of times. I've often said that one of the most humbling experiences is service on the Florida Public Service Commission, right? Because you touch every single Floridian Absolutely. With your actions. And to do that at a very young age in leadership can be intimidating too, right? And so how have you reconciled all of that in your own career?
Yeah, it sometimes you're right. It really can be overwhelming when you think about my yay or nay vote, depending on my if I'm in the majority, can impact directly millions of Americans' lives, our economy. And so, like with that being said, I of course just don't take anything lightly. It's a
Right.
really important role that we play, and so it's really for my approach to it is, making sure that I am as informed as I possibly can when I'm coming to make that decision. And I have and as you know from your time as a commissioner, Lila, our role is a balancing act, and that is really what we're charged to do. And so every stakeholder that's involved in a docket is going to put forth their arguments, and we need to review those very thoughtfully and conscientiously, and come up with what we believe is in the public interest.
Well said. That's so well said. And so you're not, as I referenced earlier, you're not a stranger to the PSC. So it had to have helped you
Absolutely.
that you started in the legal department of the Public Service Commission. So talk to our viewers about how that all came about and what exactly you did in the legal department.
Sure. I was fortunate enough. I had been an intern while I was in law school at the PSC, so over a summer was there, and then was brought back on after I took and passed the bar, and I had a couple years under my belt in that experience. And I mean, like I said, as you know, like it is a steep learning curve. Like this is a very complex industry. The regulatory process is different than a lot of other agencies, and so it's not so black and white that in law school you study administrative law and you're going to understand what goes on in a state public service commission.
Mhm.
It's just different. So that really helped me familiarizing myself with those new like innumerable amount of acronyms that we have, so I just could understand that. But honestly, I think actually the most important thing was that those relationships I had with
Mhm.
staff. I mean, we have the most educated, informed staff. I mean, I'm a little biased, but I think of like any state agency. It's just they're amazing. And but there's somebody who has an answer to any question you might have. So just knowing who to contact about that, and so having those pre-existing relationships. I was doing that as a lawyer, contacting staff, like any technical staff, like if it was an engineering question, an accounting question, I knew where to go. And so I just do the same thing now. It's just, from a different line, but I'm still in the building. So,
I still believe that the Florida staff is among the greatest in the whole country. I still
yeah,
believe that, having many years removed now from the PSC, but as you travel the country and meet other regulatory officials and, get exposed to other, no offense, obviously, to our
yeah.
neighbor brethren, but there is a deep bench of
Mhm.
institutional knowledge there at the Florida PSC. And loyalty to the institution. It's really
Right.
unmatched, I think, in some parts of the country.
I agree.
So, the reason I asked you the state agency question and how you started your career right out of law school is because, as you know, with the Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum, Sarah Sims and I do a lot of work with the students in colleges and universities about looking forward to a career in energy and really thinking out of the box in terms of what opportunities are provided through the industry. And I always emphasize not to rule out beginning your career or ending your career, frankly, right? Staying within that state agency model. Where are you on that? What words of wisdom would you offer those students too?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm going to obviously advocate on behalf of the PSC. It's my agency and I love it. But there are so many state agencies that if they want to get involved in the energy industry, there's like of just a variety of agencies that we work with. I mean, I'm going to shout out to Office of Public Counsel is, if you're going into a legal career. They are, another agency that's created by the legislature. They advocate on behalf of Florida's utility consumers, and they play a vital role in our regulatory process. We
Mhm.
wouldn't be able to do what we do and come up with our decisions without
Mhm.
that office. The Office of Energy is another, that they are a subset within the Department of Ag and Consumer Services. So when we're talking about these large federal grant dollars that are coming down from legislation, they help initiate that when we're talking about like Florida energy programs and projects. I also want to the Department of Economic Opportunity is
Yeah,
another one.
yeah,
They deal with so much when you're talking about grant requests and funding. They administer the LIHEAP program, which is a federal funded home energy assistance program. They help Florida families with home heating and cooling costs. So I mean, I'm in the Division of Emergency Management, another one. I
right.
mean, if you want to do, yeah, if you can think quick on your feet, and you want to be in the heart of making decisions and being a real, we're talking about leadership during a storm, during a major storm event in Florida, which we of course we're used to having those. They serve as the command center, and so that's another great opportunity. So they're really, yeah, you're absolutely right. There's so many state agencies that can, and they really can get you off the ground running. I think, there's a
Absolutely.
need working for the state, you're doing public service, and there's a lot to be said for that. But then also, you're not going to be somebody's coffee person for a number of years. Like
Mhm.
that's how I was when I started at the legal department of PSC. You're going to hit the ground running. And there's no better learning opportunity than that, in my opinion.
No, well, obviously you're preaching to the choir, but
Mhm,
and then there's so many different ways to use your education. So,
mhm,
people really may not be exposed to the fact that the Public Service Commission has financial expertise. We have to know
absolutely.
they're in the regulatory world just as much about stocks and bonds and securitization as any corporate
Yeah.
CEO, and the same would be true with engineers. So there's
Mhm.
absolute accountants, right?
Yeah.
Analysts, accountants.
Yeah.
Just and then of course not to take away from the need for lawyers. And I'm so glad you mentioned the Office of Public Counsel. They've got some of the greatest
Fantastic.
attorneys there, and really long, rewarding careers. DEP. So thank you for that, because I do think that in job hunting and career development, there's not enough emphasis on the opportunities that a state agency can
Mhm.
provide and help you specialize. I mean, I
Mm.
certainly didn't go to the PSC thinking this was, who of us did, thinking
Right.
that this was going to be what I would do as a career. But you step away from it for a bit and you realize that's where your specialty comes from, right? That
Absolutely.
state work. So speaking of specialty, you actually picked energy policy as a career. You started in college looking at federal energy policy.
Mhm.
Y- Share with us, Commissioner, like why? Why was that always an interest of yours?
I think so. It really started. I think when I was going to law school, I knew I wanted to be doing either environmental law or something in that broad category. I didn't see myself as doing criminal or tort law or anything like that. Just didn't fit my personality. But then when I got to law school, I was so lucky. I had this professor who taught a federal energy practicum, and basically this was a very hands-on, where it was only like 8 students in the class, and we walked through the last century of regulatory reforms. We're talking about federal energy policy and laws and the legal paradigm that operated in. And we're back to, it started with the railroad, regulating the railroads, and moving up into now what we have in the federal side, regulating wholesale sales of electricity. States regulate the retail sale of electricity. And so when I was in that class, I was just like, there is this whole apparatus of like things that are happening, and I've never thought about it. I've just turned
Mm,
on a light and it's happened. So I just wanted to dig more into. That's why I like regulatory law. It's this whole underground network of things that are happening, and you just kind of, it impacts everybody's day-to-day lives, but we're
Mhm.
just, just rolling with it. So when
We
I
can take it for
it's
granted, yeah. So many
definitely
Americans take it for granted until there's a crisis, right?
until there's a crisis, exactly. And
Yeah,
that's, and hopefully, and that's what we're here to, is to prevent that crisis. So I
yeah,
hope that's the goal, really, is that I don't even mind that Americans take it for granted, because that's the role of the regulator. We're here to ensure that the, safe and reliable, affordable electricity and or energy gets to a home without any hiccups. So, but I just wanted to be part of that process. And so then once I made that decision, I was like, I'm going all in. Any opportunity I could possibly get in the energy industry, I was taking it, just to, I mean, it's so diverse, as we've talked
it
about.
is,
And
yeah.
so it's, and so it's, you can do all different area, all different sides of it, even within on the lead, even if you're coming from a legal perspective. And so I just, dove in.
Yeah. There's so much about your term now, your time, I should say, all of
Mhm.
you now that is reminiscent of you recall I served from 99 until 2005 and and before that of course on staff. There
Mhm.
was a time then when on the energy side we were talking about the move away from coal, right, to natural gas. Actually, it was the move away from coal and oil to natural gas and nuclear at the time, and the importance of fuel diversity from a
Mhm.
let's get our country away from the reliance of foreign fuel, right?
Mhm.
And I am showing my age. I know that's such a wrong thing to do, but as I reflect on what you all are dealing with now, it's good. It's good. You are now taking the industry collaboratively, right, with the industry to what does energy look like going forward, and how do you meet the future demands of Florida and an ever growing population. But as I listen to the discussion, sometimes I tune in, sometimes
Yeah.
I tune in and I hear the questions, the great questions you're asking, Commissioner, and the discussions that are coming in front of you. I have these flashbacks. It's not
Yeah.
we're not talking about coal
Yeah.
or oil, but you are definitely
The
talking
questions are
about
the
other
same.
segments. The questions are the same, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and now with a national look-see on the role of natural gas, I guess let's kind of dive right into that. Where do you see the role of all of those segments of the industry as we provide, energy going forward?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's, now the conversation is, less about coal. It's not economically efficient anymore, and so
Mhm,
it's made it a kind of an easier decision to move away from that.
mhm,
But really, what our charge is, a big part of what the commission's role is also reliability, and so we have to keep that always in mind. And so we are so supportive of these innovative programs that the utilities are coming up with, because decarbonization is a global effort, and we want to be a part of that. And I
mhm.
don't think anybody disagrees with that anymore, but it's really how we get there. And so I'm just a larger advocate for continuing fuel diversity in the portfolio as we are moving towards different sources. So as long as we are keeping that there is a reliable access of of energy when we need it, because that really can be life or death for people. And so we'll move we're moving in that direction. And there's just so many, like I said, just so many different ways of getting there. I mean, and there's still, the role of other, more carbon based sources like natural gas, like other. I'm on a national committee that deals with looking at ways that we can decarbonize using those fossil fuels, like when carbon sequestration technology. I mean, there is no shortage of innovative
Yeah.
technologies coming to the front to tackle these issues. And as we achieve larger economies of scale, we can integrate those. And you're going to see companies wanting to do that more. Again, our role is more of as an economic regulator to ensure that it's cost efficient for Florida's consumers. And so that's when we're talking about all the different stakeholders getting involved in the process, because we have a pretty specific, our charge is specific when it comes to that, but we want to be a part of the process and encourage all these different developments in any way that we can.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to read all the places you're involved on a national level because I don't want to leave anything out. You've really made a good place for the agency through your role on a national level, and I'm just thrilled about that. But we're going to talk about the importance, why that's important to Floridians in a minute. So, Commissioner Passidomo is a member of the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, NARUC. You serve on the Gas Committee and Pipeline Safety. You're a member of the Financial Research Institute's Advisory Board, and recently you were appointed to the Gas Technology Institute's Public Interest Advisory Council. It's a mouthful. It's a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
work. The reason it's important to just really lay all that out is it's not as simple as being a member of the Florida PSC. You also are the representative on a national level on all things Florida energy. And of course, not to leave out all, you also regulate water and you still have a small role in telecommunications. But for purposes of what you and I are talking about today, we'll concentrate on the role you play on a national level related to energy. And you have to, right? Explain to the viewers why you've got to have a seat at that national table.
Yeah, for so many reasons. I mean, the first, most importantly, when we're talking about federal legislation, we need to know Congress, the laws that Congress is passing, and how that impact, because it's a national commodity, really, energy is. And so yes, we, as at my PSC role, when we're talking about rate regulation, that is just retail sales within the state. But we still want to ensure that those federal programs that they're trying to encourage certain technology development, how do we bring that back to Florida? And we've seen that in the last couple of years with the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. Those both were large pieces of legislation with billions of federal dollars that are usually administered through the Department of Energy, and they were complex. And so when right after those were passed, I remember going to NARUC and they had so many discussions. Okay, this is still a moving target. We're still trying to figure out exactly what this means. And so having somebody from the state acting almost like a liaison between the federal and our state is really important, to be in that room, hearing those discussions, being part of those discussions, because that's, we don't want to lose out on, we're one of the fastest growing states in the country. We deserve to be a part of those discussions and a part of that federal grant dollars. So that's really important for us. And just understanding what's going on in other states is also really important. I mean, we've talked about in the past, how Florida really has just been such a leader, especially when we're talking about, storm resiliency and hardening of their infrastructure. And so that's the inverse, is that we actually play a really important role to educate other commissioners from across the country. Like, they come to us asking, well, how did you implement these programs in a cost effective way? And so we can educate them. They also likewise are doing their own pilot programs. When they say, that old adage from law school is that, like, states are, like that's how you learn about it, or like laws and stuff, and how federal legislation will come out of different state policies. That's really what it is. It's that, like, we are all doing trials and we're all doing different sort of programs to figure out what's best for our state and learning from one another. And so that's why I like being a part of these programs, because I've sort of been touching upon it, but this industry is just evolving so quickly. You have to be willing to engage all the time, educate yourself, evolve as much as you can. And so that's what I use those federal programs that I'm a part of, those national programs I'm a part of, is just to understand that.
It's so important. And, we used to say, look, if we're not at the table, it's not like the federal government isn't going to move forward and do what it's going to do. But if you're not at the table, you can't communicate where there might be unintended consequences or a negative impact to, the consumers in the state of Florida. And it's just critical. In my time, the biggest debate, Commissioner, was that thankfully we saved. Florida was able to prevent the federal government at the time and FERC from dividing the country into four regions.
Right.
It was the conversation about regional transmission organizations. And as you know, now Florida's a peninsular state, and those things that happen in other regions cannot happen in Florida. And
Mm-hmm.
at the time, our pipeline capacity was so limited. But had we not had that seat at the table, you and I probably wouldn't be talking about the kinds of
Mm-hmm.
opportunities that you're addressing right now today.
Right.
And so I congratulate you for your national leadership. Keep on keeping on. It's such an important place for Florida to be. You mentioned storm resiliency, storm restoration several times now. Let's talk about that, but I want to do it in the context of, is it okay if you and I get a little personal now? Let's get
Sure.
personal.
Yeah. Yeah. We're friends. Yeah.
There's always a part of this show where we've got to get a little
Yeah.
personal. So the I guess it was Hurricane Ian, right? Had really impacted your family home in
Yeah.
Naples, and obviously being familiar with the industry, the importance of storm hardening and the leadership the industry has in restoration. But that was such a personal experience for you to witness.
Yeah.
What'd you walk away thinking about,
Um, well, yeah, first I mean, it was initially just pretty overwhelming, pretty devastating. I mean, it's compounded at my childhood home. My parents still live in it. I was born and raised it. I mean, they've been in that house for like 36 years. So,
Mhm.
and when you put it in that context, living on a finger canal in Naples, they have actually gotten really lucky in a lot of other storms, and they've been spared. But this one, and this demonstrates the uniqueness of Hurricane Ian. It was primarily a water storm surge event. It wasn't, when we're talking, those category 5 winds, and that obviously can cause a lot of devastation. At least when I looked at my childhood home, my neighborhood, it was storm surge, and it was unbelievable. So just I went down about 5 or 6 days after the storm had hit, and it's raw. You're going around, and everybody's lives are out on the street because everything in their house is ruined. So you're getting to see people's couches and TVs and anything, because it's all water damage. And same thing with my parents' house, and so that was pretty overwhelming, just because it's it was such a part of our family.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, I mean, to see the community effort that came together. I mean, you don't ever that's the other thing, out of that sad situation, you have just a community that comes together in an unbelievable way, and so much support. And so we're so grateful, and honestly, everything, they're rebuilding, and I think actually they should be moving back in. I think they're moving back. My parents are moving back into the house this weekend, so
Good.
that's a
Very
really good
good.
sign. Yeah, so
Yeah,
they've got
absolutely.
it took some time, but
Sure.
so that's but it's what I took away as bringing it back to as a commissioner, that less like more of the professional, less of the personal here, is that it just showed me how unique each storm is. And as we continually improve upon our radar technology, and we have gotten so much better. I mean, this was a last minute,
Yeah.
that storm turn. I mean, we thought it was hitting the Tampa Bay. So it just shows, like, there's still there's work to be done there, and then there's also things that might just be a little bit beyond our control, and it's just
Yeah.
that we have to continue to adapt and to be ready for all of these, because storms are taking all these different sort of and you have to, certain infrastructure investments that you make in one area might not be appropriate in another, just depending on proximity to the coastline or other bodies of water, where how much wind is. So it's, that's kind of what I took away, was just, man, every storm
Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
different.
And you're so right, though, about acknowledging the people part of all of it, right? And the community coming together. You heard so many stories like that with both Hurricane Ian and then several years earlier with Hurricane Michael, which both had such a different storms,
Yeah,
very
different in their impact. Yes.
different characteristics, but equal in damage and aftermath and the people impact. And of course, the energy industry rises to every occasion, thankfully, and the restoration efforts are getting so much better, right? And
Oh yeah.
but just from a human perspective, it's heartwarming to see the community come together and really fulfill a need of making sure everyone is, on a human level, okay, right?
Mhm.
And just managing through the loss. So,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
I'm glad that that is personally coming together for you
Yeah.
and your family, but it's an experience I think you take with you as a regulator going forward too, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah,
it's, and and it also grounds you. It shows, myself and the four other commissioners, we are all Floridians, and we live in
yeah,
this state, and we have we're just as vulnerable sometimes as anybody else, and so, you know we try to, we take a to step back. We're making decisions. It's not a, we're not thinking about ourselves or thinking about the state, because
yeah,
that's our charge.
right,
But we are still human beings at the same time. We're still Floridians, and so that always is going to be in the back of our mind of, like, when we're making these decisions, people like us, how are they going to deal with it? How are we going to, you're going to work to make sure that, I like you said, Brian, I mean, I applaud our utilities were so quick to respond. I mean, if you see the restoration efforts, I remember when we had those crazy back to back 05, 06,
yeah,
those storms, and the difference back then versus now
hmm,
about restoration, it's just night and day. I mean, so they've really and come a long way, and being able to get the power back on as quickly as possible. So
yeah,
it's and it, like, in there, and it circles back to the conversation, the national conversation. I mean, when we can show how fast we can restore power, we have, utilities in the West that are dealing with these terrible fires and now floods, and they're coming to us and asking, well, how did you build your infrastructure to be as resilient as it can? Because you can never be 100% storm proof, we know that, but you can do the best you can with the technology that you have, and the funds that you have, and so that's really what we're looking at. And so it's, yeah, we continue to display that we're real leaders when it
yeah.
comes to infrastructure hardening. So
Good, absolutely. So we spoke. You made mention of your mother, and let's put that out there,
sure.
Gabby. You
Okay.
Because I know you personally, I know you are absolutely brilliant. You are a rising star. We're lucky to have you agree to service. Um, there's a special place in my heart, as you know, for women who have had to over explain their expertise and knowledge. So I'm going to ask you this question so that you can address it. Just
Sure.
let's hit it
Sure.
straight on.
Sure.
Your wonderful mom, who I have to disclose is a Stetson alum. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
so your mom is thankfully president of the Senate. Just
Mhm.
what a wonderful time in history and Florida legislative history. But
Yeah.
she is president of the Senate,
Mhm.
Kathleen Passidomo. And some might think that you got appointed to the Florida Public Service Commission because you are President Passidomo's daughter.
Mhm.
And so how does that make you feel?
I think
Talk about
yeah,
that, Gabby.
yeah. Well, initially it was like a little frustrating because, but now I just try to ignore it because, like, I mean, it's really all I can say. Like, her influence over my position now really just it started and it stopped with her being just like my personal role model as
Yeah.
she's my mom. Like it, we when we had my sister. I have two older sisters. We all have chosen pretty different career
Oh, wait a minute,
paths.
wait a minute. So
Oh,
not only is that your mom, you're the baby?
yes, I'm the baby.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah, yep. So, and so, but we had just this amazing figurehead, a woman
yeah.
leader, at the head of the family. And both, I mean, her and my dad, they have such a partnership, and they just demonstrated just this ceaseless work ethic, and that if you're whatever you want to do, you give it all you have, you fully dedicated, and you keep people in mind and your priority. And so that's really that's as much as like her influence, really. I mean, it's the best thing is that she happens to be in Tallahassee now that I live here. When she comes up, I get to see her very rarely, actually, because she's a very busy woman.
Mm.
But we'll get to, like, it's nice to have dinner with her or something. But she has very little understanding of the complex nature of the energy industry. It's not really one of her
No,
pillars,
she's never really taken it, which
No.
listen, for as a PSC commissioner, you'll find out, and that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we like
That's
to, like, as long as we are better. If we're out of the spotlight, that's a good sign,
yeah,
because that means
yeah,
that things are operating the way that they should.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's. I mean, we just talk about. We're all just proud of ourselves, my sisters and I, for the way where we are now, and it's. I think it has a lot to be attributed just to our parents and what they, the work ethic that they instilled in us just by us observing them over the years that we grew up with them. But um you know as far as my job, I mean, I just, like we talked about, I mean, I just fell in love with that interdisciplinary complex nature of the energy industry, and I was like, all right, I'm going all in for it. And and my parents are supportive, and they're whatever, like, you do what you want to do if that's what you like. And but that's about it. That was
And let me tell
it's
you, anyone who doesn't have a child from that, 25 to 35
Mhm.
generation, uh, may not believe you, but having a child in that generation, it is so true. There's not a
Yeah.
parent that's gonna like not you're not necessarily going to listen to them. So
Yeah. Oh,
and that's
exactly. I
okay. You
mean,
are independent minded. That's okay. You are
yeah, yeah. As
independent
long as
minded
we're
and
doing what we love, and
yeah.
if it's what we believe is good for all, it's we're helping people in our own respective ways. And so, yeah, no, I think it does. Yeah, I find I'm usually the quiet one at Thanksgiving dinner because nobody totally understands what I do, and
Right.
that's fine. Yeah. So they
Right.
don't ask many questions because they don't really. Yeah.
Right. One of
Yeah.
the our producer just put up the reminder dates for our next forum, August 14th
Mhm.
through the 16th, which I know, Commissioner, you never miss the forum. So
Well, they're
thank you for
fantastic.
that. Um, one of the questions I asked the Rising Star panel we had last year with Sarah Sims and a few others from the industry. Does your family even understand what you do? Does your family know what you do? And hands down, all
Yeah.
of them were like, no, and we've tried to explain,
Yeah.
and that's okay because it is a complicated industry, but so rewarding. And I want to
Yeah.
end on that note, Commissioner. So, for the students that listen to our podcast, what advice would you give that, second, third year female
Mhm.
student who wants a career in energy, not quite sure how to
Yeah,
go
which
about doing that?
right. I mean, I would say the most important thing is just maintain the curiosity that you had that initially got you interested in the industry. And it is it's constantly evolving, so you have to be willing to learn and evolve with it. And Actually, this is some advice that my dad gave me early on. He's like, prepare, prepare, prepare. Always be the most prepared person in the room. So if no matter what direction you want to go, just absorb everything. Like, just read about the industry, read about new technologies and how something that strikes your interest, engage with it and see, what opportunities can come of that. But I think, if you follow those kind of guidelines of maintaining curiosity and being prepared, because that's how I was. I didn't know I was going to be a commissioner a couple years ago, but when the door opened, I was like, I'm going to go for it. But I had that background, and that to feel confident enough to take that leap. So you stay prepared. You'll never be bored in this industry. I'll tell you that
No,
much.
that's so true.
It's a great field. So I'm so
Great
excited
field.
for those students that you work with. I think they have a fantastic career ahead of them, no matter what area of the industry they want to get involved in.
Thank you. So I know Sarah's listening. I think we just found your role at the forum. I want you to meet with those students. I'd
I
love for
would
you to
love
meet and
love
work.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So see, you never know what's going to happen on our show. There you go.
Yeah, yeah,
There you
yeah.
go. There
Looks
you
like I'll
go.
be busy next August. So that sounds great.
Absolutely. Our theme is build, and we're going to build those students up so that they have a
Awesome.
career in energy commissioner. It's August 14th through the 16th. Thank you for doing this. Most importantly, thank you for your leadership.
Thank
I
you,
am
Lila.
so happy for you. I'm so happy for you. The best is yet to come on the Florida PSC. I think that your leadership really has already been demonstrated, and good luck to you for years ahead. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Lila. I appreciate the time.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.